President Cyril Ramaphosa termed as an insult Donald Trump's statement that he would bar South Africa from attending next year's G20 Summit on American soil. In a statement Thursday, the presidency said South Africa would continue to participate as a full and active member of the G20. Last weekend, South Africa hosted a successful G20 summit, the first on African soil, which Washington boycotted despite being the incoming G20 president. South Africa rejected the U.S.'s suggestion to hand over the presidency to an embassy official.
The global diplomatic landscape has witnessed a significant development following an announcement by United States President Donald Trump regarding South Africa's participation in the upcoming 2026 G20 summit. The statement, released through official communication channels, indicated that the United States would not be extending an invitation to South Africa for the meeting scheduled to take place in Miami next year. This announcement has sparked a wave of official clarifications, formal responses, and procedural explanations as international institutions and governments examine what this decision means for the G20 and its processes. The G20, formerly known as the Group of 20, is one of the world's major international economic cooperation forums. It brings together 19 countries and the European Union to discuss global financial stability, economic coordination, and long-term development priorities. South Africa is the only African country that has been a permanent member of the G20 since its establishment in 1999, participating consistently in annual summits and contributing to discussions on global development, energy, investment, and emerging market growth. The current issue began shortly after the conclusion of the 2025 G20 Summit, which was hosted in Johannesburg, South Africa, the first G20 summit ever held on the African continent. Following the event, President Trump issued a statement citing concerns relating to what he described as procedural irregularities during the conclusion of the summit and the handover of responsibilities for the next G20 hosting cycle. This announcement quickly received attention from governments, global institutions, and international media outlets, prompting clarifications from South African authorities and discussions among policy experts familiar with G20 operations. As part of the G20 tradition, the hosting nation typically hands over symbolic and administrative documents to the next host country at the close of each summit. South African officials explained that their government followed the standard diplomatic protocol by transferring the relevant documents through official channels. According to the South African presidency, the U.S. delegation did not attend the closing ceremony in Johannesburg, and as a result, the handover was completed via the Ministry of International Relations and Cooperation. They emphasize that this process aligns with established diplomatic norms when delegations are not physically present.
Trump cited what he described as horrific human rights abuses endured by white farmers and South Africa's refusal to symbolically hand off the G20 presidency at the end of this year's summit to the United States. South Africa has demonstrated to the world they are not a country worthy of membership anywhere, Trump wrote on his Truth Social platform. The South African government refuses to acknowledge or address the horrific human rights abuses endured by Afrikaners and other descendants of Dutch, French, and German settlers, Trump wrote in his post on Wednesday.
In response to the U.S. announcement, the South African government issued a formal statement reaffirming its position within the G20. The statement noted that South Africa remains a full and recognized member of the group, and that membership status is determined collectively by all G20 members. The presidency emphasized that South Africa intends to continue playing its role in global economic cooperation, regardless of administrative or procedural disagreements that may arise between individual countries. The South African government further clarified that the Johannesburg summit successfully concluded its agenda and outcomes, which included discussions on sustainable development, climate cooperation, economic resilience, and digital innovation across the global economy. The final communiqué of the 2025 summit was issued with contributions from all member states, and the event was largely viewed as a milestone moment for the African continent in terms of leadership and participation in global governance structures. The U.S. announcement comes at a time when international institutions and member states are increasingly focused on strengthening multilateral cooperation. The G20 operates on the basis of broad consensus, and decisions regarding participation, hosting, and membership typically follow collaborative processes among all members. As experts note, The G20 does not have a formal mechanism for unilateral removal or exclusion of any member, since the group functions through agreement rather than a binding treaty framework. As a result, any procedural concerns or disputes are generally resolved through diplomatic engagement and consultation among the participating countries. International analysts observing the situation have pointed out several key facts regarding the G20 framework. First, membership in the G20 has remained unchanged since the group transitioned from a finance ministers' meeting platform to a leaders' summit after the 2008 global financial crisis. Second, the hosting rotation for G20 summits is usually planned years in advance, with countries preparing logistical, administrative, and policy frameworks long before the actual meeting. Third, participation in the summit is traditionally open to all member states, regardless of differing bilateral relations or political differences. As discussions continue, other G20 member states are expected to offer clarification on the matter based on the group's collective procedures. Historically, the effectiveness of the G20 has depended on cooperation and constructive dialogue, particularly in addressing global economic challenges that require shared policy responses. These include energy security, trade coordination, financial system stability, public health readiness, and long-term development goals. South Africa, for its part, has reaffirmed its commitment to these priorities. In its official statement, the presidency highlighted the country's long-standing contribution to global economic forums and development platforms. South Africa continues to participate actively in various multilateral institutions, including the United Nations, the African Union, BRICS, and regional economic communities. Its involvement in the G20, according to the presidency, is part of a broader national strategy to engage constructively with global partners on economic and development issues. The country's role as host of the 2025 G20 Summit was seen as an important moment for Africa's engagement with the global economy. The summit brought together leaders and delegations from major economies, international financial institutions, and observers focused on cooperation in areas such as infrastructure development, technology, climate management, and sustainable growth. South Africa's leadership during the summit highlighted its interest in ensuring that developing economies remain central to global policy discussions. Looking ahead, the global community will be observing how the situation develops in the months leading up to the 2026 summit. Whether through formal G20 discussions or diplomatic negotiations, there will likely be efforts to ensure that the group maintains its role as a platform for international cooperation. Given the G20's importance in addressing shared economic challenges, continuity and inclusiveness remain key factors in its effectiveness. For now, South Africa has stated it will continue engaging with all G20 partners through recognized diplomatic channels. The government has emphasized that it is committed to contributing to global economic stability and sustainable development, regardless of the recent administrative announcement. As both nations continue their respective preparations, the outcome will depend on procedural clarifications and discussions within the broader G20 framework. This development marks an important moment in the ongoing evolution of international economic cooperation. While administrative decisions and procedural questions may arise, the core purpose of multilateral institutions remains unchanged: to facilitate dialogue, problem-solving, and shared progress among the world's leading economies.
I now say that this gavel of this G20 summit formally closes this summit and now moves on to the next president of the G20, which is the United States, where we shall see each other again next year. The summit is therefore closed.